boys and girls, it's time to go over our DMA solutions for week 32, day 1. So if we want to get started here, we're on Mondays, 4 problems. So if we want to take a look here, we'll get started with our equations. And we are missing parts of our equations. In this case, for the first one, we are missing our dividend. Our dividend is the total number of objects we are putting into groups. And we notice here that we have 2 groups, and there's 7 in each group. So we need to find out how many objects we can put into 2 groups and have 7 in each group. So if we use our understanding of multiplication, and we know that we have 2 groups, and there are 7 in each group, the total objects that we have would be 2 groups of 7, which would be 14. So our missing dividend is going to be 14. 2 is the divisor, and 7 is our quotient. Now we could also use our understanding of groups. So we have 2 groups and 7 in each group. And in this case, if we count the total objects, we would of course have 14 total objects that we broke up into 2 groups with 7 in each group. Next equation, we have 5 groups of some missing number here. We don't know what that number is, but we could put an N here to stand for a number. But we know that we have 30 total objects, whatever that be. So if we have 5 groups, we could start placing these 30 objects into these groups until we reach 30, and we could count how many are going to be in each group. So if we were to do that, we would start with putting tally marks in each one of our groups. That's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and finally 30. Now, if we look at each one of these groups, we can see that we have 6 in each group. So the missing factor for this equation would be 5 groups of 6, gives us a total number of 30. The next equation we have is a multiplication equation. Again, we have the factor is 8. That tells us how many groups. We have 6 in each group. So we need to find how many total objects we have. So we could put a P for the number of objects, an O, an N. We can put anything in there that's going to represent what that number is going to be once we find out the total number of objects. So we could start using our understanding of groups and put 6 in each group. But remember, we've talked about efficiency. So we could do groups of 6 and count by 6s. So we'd have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 6 groups of 6 is 36, 42, and finally 8 groups of 6 would be 48. So by counting multiples of 6, we were able to find out that 48 is going to be our total number of objects. So P, or whatever that number is our product. Our product is 48. Our next problem says, look at the clock and ask what time will it be in 25 minutes. So if we remember, you thinking about when we started talking about number lines, we were talking about how to use a number line to solve for time. So if we use a number line, or a timeline in this case, we look at the time on our clock to start with. Well, we want to know what time it will be in 25 minutes. So we know our start time because our start time says, look at the clock. So our start time is 7, because this is our hour hand. That's our hour hand. And then we look at our minute hand to determine the minutes. So we notice that it would be 7, and then our minute hand, we have 5 minutes from here to here, and another 5 minutes from here to here. So since we have 5:10, our starting time is going to be 7:10. What time will it be in 25 minutes? So we could do this one of two ways. We could add 20 minutes to the 10 minutes, and that would be 30 minutes. And that would make this time 7:30. And then we could add another 5 minutes to the 7:30, and that would give us an end time, or a will be time, of 7:35. Or we could add two groups of 10. So we could say 10:20, which would still give us 7:30, and then add the 5 minutes. Or we could count 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and that means our end time would be right there on the clock. So still going to be 7:35. Several ways to look at it. Again, normally we would like to put AM or PM, but in this particular case we don't know because we don't have any clue to help us understand whether this is an AM hour or PM hour. So at this point in time, we'll just leave it as 7:35. Let's look at our next set of problems, two more. We have round each number to the nearest 10, then subtract. So, kind of similar to our lesson video on capacity and mass, I asked you to round each capacity or mass to the nearest 10. So in this case, we have 600, and the 50 tells us that our 10s are going to be either 650 or 660. Those are the two 10s that 653 falls between. For 307, we have the two 10s of 300 and 310. Now, remember, we look at the ones place to decide if we're going to round up or down. So in this case, we see the 3 is less than 5. So 3 is less than 5. We're going to round down to 650. With 307, we look at the ones place and we see it's greater than 5. So since it's greater than 5, we are going to round up in this case. Now, we're going to look for the about. Since these both have been rounded, now we know that we can subtract 650 minus 300. So if we wanted to use the break apart or the subtract off strategy, we can. So if I subtract off 650 minus 300, that would give me 350. And then I take that 350 and subtract 10. That would give me 340. Or I can subtract 600 minus 300 is 300, and 50 minus 10 is 40. And that will still give me 340 as my estimate. Now, if we wanted to take that and see what the actual amount would be and see if our estimation is correct, we could take the 653 and subtract 307. So, again, I could take the 653, subtract 300, which would give me 353. Then I could take the 353 and subtract 7. Well, I could break the 7 up as 4 and 3. subtract 3, which would make 350, then subtract 4, which would make 346. 346. So my difference for 653 minus 307 is going to be 346. Now, if I wanted to check my answer, I could use my difference, add the 307 back to that, and see if we came up with 653 to check it. Moving on to our word problem, we have Henry, and Henry found 79 shells on the beach, and he gave his mom 34. But then later on, he found 81 more. So how many shells does he have now? So what we can do is underline our important information. So we know that Henry has found 79 shells. He gave his mom 34 of the shells. Now, when we think about giving, what operation is going to come to our mind? Hopefully, you're saying subtraction, because when you give something away, you have less than what you started with. But then later on, he can add 81 more because he found some more after that. So, we can start with our 79 shells. And that would be, of course, a total to start with. He's going to give away 34 of those shells. And give them to his mom. And so we could take 79, and we know that when we take 79 and subtract 30, that would give us 49, and subtract 49 minus the 4, and that should give us 45 shells that he has left after he gave his mom some. Now, we also need to remember this is a two-step problem, because now we want to know how many shells he has at this point. So, Henry has blank, or S shells. We don't know how many there are, but they're going to be shells. So we are going to take the 45 that he has left, because he gave his mom those shells, so he no longer has those. So we're going to take the 45 and add 81 more to that. And once we add those together, we know that 80 and 40 will give us 120. And 5 and 1 will give us 6. And together, that makes 126 shells. So we know that Henry has 126 shells. Since we started off with 79 and subtracted 34 from the ones we gave Mom, then we took the 45 that we had left and added 81 more onto the ones he found after he gave some to Mom. And so now, this is how many he has now. So we're done with our solutions for day 1. We'll come back tomorrow and we'll do solutions for day 2 for week 32. Have a great day, guys.